Welcome to the director's cut of Christian Nutrition, the show where we review every single episode of VeggieTales chronologically. And by we, I mean just me. An Easter Carol. I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, isn't that supposed to be a Christmas Carol? But no. Obviously, the story of Scrooge is based off of Easter, not Christmas. A Christmas Carol was a hoax the entire time. Devious plan to throw all of us off. What are the odds that the Easter review lands on Easter weekend and I didn't have to go out of my way to make it this weekend? Pure chance, let me assure you. But as many of you guessed, An Easter Carol is our next review, and there's a couple of facts we need to cover before we dive into this thing. Basically, this was the last episode that Big Idea made all by themselves. After this, they were bought out, and it's mostly due to Jonah VeggieTales movie not being the big success they thought it would be. Jonah really was the straw that broke the camel's back, and in this case, the camel being Big Idea. And if you want to read all about it, I actually encourage you to check out Phil Vischer's website. He explains in detail why Big Idea went under. And with that somber note in mind, let's review An Easter Carol. No countertop scene and no opening VeggieTales theme. This only happened twice before, with The Star of Christmas, which was okay, and Esther. If we have a repeat of Esther, I will walk off this set. We open up with a song that isn't catchy, but isn't bad either.
We sing this tune as rainbows bloom on eggs red, green, and blue.
The window here is mighty dear, a precious work of art.
We then see Junior and his dad in front of a church. This strangely looks a lot like the one from The Star of Christmas, with Junior's dad still being the pastor, but Junior's now injured. A bit early to already be reusing locations, don't you think, VeggieTales? The Star of Christmas was only 2 episodes ago. We then find out via exposition galore that Mr. Nezzer doesn't come to church. However, he does own the Easter egg factory in town. By the way, have you not noticed everything that Mr. Nezzer owns in these episodes? We are over 15 episodes into this show, and we have seen Mr. Nezzer own now an Easter egg factory, a chocolate factory, a toy factory, and that little stand he had in Jonah movie. This dude is loaded. He's filthy rich. Mr. Nezzer's grandma started the Easter egg factory, and despite her passing away, Mr. Nezzer still runs it faithfully.
Look, Millward, we've been working for your uncle for more than a year now to pay him back for burning down his theater, right?
Wait, what? Is this a true sequel to The Star of Christmas? After doing some research, I found out that, yeah, this episode actually is a true sequel to The Star of Christmas, and it takes place a year and 4 months later. I like the continuity, but it kind of ruins the opportunity for some good old-fashioned, down and dirty, hootin' and hollering Veggieception. We then find out Mr. Nezzer actually doesn't care for Easter service, as it gets in the way of people purchasing his plastic eggs on Easter Day. Look, I get it. You're a businessman. You got a business to run, and it's a very seasonal business on top of that. It only works a month, maybe 2 months a year at most. But look, Mr. Nezzer, no one's buying plastic Easter eggs on Easter. Also, I just now realized that this episode kills off the idea of the Easter Bunny for kids. Sorry, parents, you're gonna have to explain to your kids why you've been lying to them all this time.
Everything is going so well, so couldn't we close up shop just for Easter?
Bob, you really should know better than that. I just don't talk to me.
What? Close up shop? Do you know what that would mean?
Thank you for correcting them, Mr. Nezzer. How dare they want a national holiday off? Mr. Nezzer explains how his grandma started the factory. In fact, she basically started the Easter holiday as we know it today. Now, we're talking about the Easter Bunny / Easter egg side of it, not the real meaning of Jesus rising from the grave. We get an ultra boring musical number by Mr. Nezzer. It is actually touching that by carrying on her legacy with the factory, he feels as if he is still connected to her. On the other hand, Mr. Nezzer clearly has no idea what Easter really is about. In fact, he is going to destroy the church because why not?
Look, I know my grandma liked that old church, but I have no idea why. I need to make Easter bigger to keep her alive, and that church is just in the way.
Oh, I just now figured out what's gonna happen. Mr. Nezzer's gonna discover the true meaning of Easter by the end of the episode. Anyways, let's get past all this boring setup and get to the meat of the story, shall we? Oh, silly Mr. Nezzer. I don't know why the fairy is actually doing this. That is more like it.
Ding, ding, ding. Give the man a prize. Perhaps you aren't as dense as they say.
Few things. Number one, if you watched my last review, you know that Rebecca St. James is voicing the fairy here in this episode. Number two, she's being kind of a jerk for someone who's already past their prime in 2003. 3, who is they and why are they all saying Mr. Nezzer is dense? So, Rebecca St. James takes Mr. Nezzer on a trip. If you have ever seen A Christmas Carol, then you know exactly where this predictable plot is going to lead us. First off is Mr. Nezzer's past as a kid at church with his grandma. Next is a year ago where we see...
I need a way to make eggs around the clock. Tick-tock, these real chickens always need a rest, you see. They don't last.
Where do I come in?
Well, I hear you're a whiz when it comes to inventing.
Okay, I admit it, that was the most creative and catchy thing in this episode. Anyways, we see a year ago that Mr. Nezzer wants production to go up for Easter eggs with fake chickens. In the present, Mr. Nezzer is shown how he is affecting others with his hasty decisions. Oh, and by the way, Rebecca St. James is still being a mega jerk to Mr. Nezzer the entire time. I don't know why, as he truly does not understand what he is doing wrong.
You don't get it, do you? They're talking about the hope of Easter. They're talking about the hope of Easter. They're talking about the hope of Easter. They're talking about the hope of Easter.
Honestly, she's being such a jerk so far, I'm actually rooting for Mr. Nezzer to punch her in her dumb fairy face. Then we see Rebecca St. James singing another dull song, pretty much the entire reason she's in this episode.
There's a story that started on Christmas when a baby was born in the night.
Though to be fair, her song does explain the meaning of Easter, so I give it a pass. Just like most people do with terrible Christian movies. Apparently in the future, without the one church that Mr. Nezzer wants to tear down, the economy tanks and there are no good people left. You're basically told that that one church is upholding the fabric of society.
The hope of Easter. The hope of Easter. The hope of Easter.
I don't buy it for a second. One church disappearing does not all of a sudden mean that everybody's become bad people and the true meaning of Easter is just forgotten. Religion isn't banned all of a sudden. People can still make another church or meet at each other's homes. They can still discuss the Bible. Like, nothing is banned, just one church was destroyed. Anyways, Mr. Nezzer learns what Easter is really about and decides not to tear down the church after all. In fact, he attends the Easter service in a major plot twist that no one saw coming. Thanks, Rebecca St. James, for saving England from becoming a major disaster. Good thing they haven't become mostly atheists over there already, but that's besides the point. I must say, this episode is a bit underwhelming. It's cliche and just follows the Christmas Carol's plot to a T. It's not bad, it's just uninteresting. That is, except for this one final scene where we see Bob and Mr. Nezzer on the brink of... well, that.
Oh, we made it.
Just seems a tad too lucky, don't you think? Bob and Mr. Nezzer end up safely escaping when it suddenly rains Easter eggs. No, not in a realistic, dangerous way, in a more nice, serene way, where gravity is kind to everyone.
It's raining men. Hallelujah, it's raining men. Amen.
Mr. Nezzer ends up going in church with everyone and sees his grandma's grave. The end. The episode was 50 minutes long, and let me say what a bland 50 minutes it was. Now, there's a reason I skipped through most of it for this review. Not much happened. I mean, things happened, don't get me wrong, but if you know A Christmas Carol's plot, as most people do, then nothing happened. Everything was a carbon copy aside from a little variation in the beginning and a little variation in the end and changing the setting from Christmas to Easter. Honestly, not much changed. It was like a fresh coat of paint on the same story. And it also confuses me how Rebecca St. James's voice
The hope of Easter.
doesn't add up to her singing. Now, I'm sure that was observed in the past, just here it really hit me. This is kind of a letdown for Big Ideas last episode, but hopefully with the next episode, the quality goes back up, as we end up reviewing A Snoodle's Tale. And let me say, it looks gay. Remember, God made you special, and he loves you very much. Bye!
The hope of Easter. The hope of Easter. The hope of Easter. The hope of Easter.